The New York Times has reported that President Biden told a key ally his campaign may be unsalvageable if he can't convince the public he's up for the job.
But wait a minute, Piers. You know the New York Times. 2 weeks ago, they were saying that anybody who was saying that Joe Biden was incapable, it was fake news. Yeah. It was, a cheap fake, all of that stuff. Now they have jumped all in on he's got to go.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you couldn't trust them then. Can you trust them now? I don't know who to believe.
Well, it seems to me it's almost reaffirming their bias, because what they're really saying is we don't think he can win. So we need to get rid of him because it's self-interested, because actually we are a Democrat newspaper without admitting it. That's what it seemed to me.
I'm really torn because in some ways, politically, please just leave it alone, because Trump will crush him. Okay. It'll be like a Reagan moment, I think, from 1984, where, I think his opponent won one state. And I think it's so obvious about him that I think it could end up being that. So that's political. What bothers me is everybody's talking about him dropping out of the race. We are being threatened as the West with nuclear weapons.
Yes.
Not just Russian nuclear weapons, but Iranian nuclear weapons, North Korean nuclear weapons. And this guy is the guy in charge. He should not just step down. If he's not good enough to run, he certainly is not good enough to be the president of the United States.
That's exactly what I was thinking when I was watching the debate, because as it unfurled, this kind of catastrophe, my 12-year-old daughter walked in halfway through and went, "Is he asleep?" about Biden. And I was like, wow, he's the president of the United States. And then I saw the briefing afterwards was, well, he's quite good between 9 and 5. But if it's later in the day, he's an old man, he gets tired. Okay, so what happens if Putin decides to rattle the nuclear cage at 7:30 or midnight or whatever? It was a terrifying admission that for large swathes of a day, he is unfit and incapable.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. I have to tell you, the main thing that I walked away from that debate was terrifying horror. I just watched that and I thought, all of our enemies are watching the president of the United States.
Yeah.
Everybody knows if you're going to go for him, go right now. This guy is literally asleep at the switch. We cannot be in the position we're in and have a president that is incapable of understanding. I don't know if you've read Annie Jacobson's book, Nuclear War.
Yeah, I interviewed her.
But
I interviewed her about it. Yeah, she was great.
It's fantastic, isn't it? There's no way Joe Biden could handle that. I mean, we are not in the position to play games. I don't know who's running the White House, but you cannot run the United States of America and be checking in at 11 o'clock and checking out at 4. Can't happen.
Glenn, what is the likely scenario here? Because there is obviously the reality check, which is that if Joe Biden does decide, as the New York Times is intimating, to step aside, if he does, then all the money that he's raised, which is a lot of money, many hundreds of millions of dollars,
$150 million.
They can only go to Kamala Harris. It can't go to any other candidate that comes in. From a political point of view, how restrictive is that on them going for argument's sake, a Gavin Newsom type? In other words, does it have to be Kamala simply because of where the money is?
So I think the money isn't the only thing. Kamala Harris was brought onto the ticket in this madness of equity. So she was brought on because he promised I would select a Black woman to be the vice president. How about we just get the most qualified? There's lots of qualified Black women, okay? But one of the congressmen was instrumental in this selection, and he's already raising holy hell. It's going to be Kamala. You cannot pass this woman up. On the Democratic side, the progressive side, you cannot replace her. She's a Black woman, the first Black woman vice president. Now you have the opportunity, you're going to replace her with a white man? That is totally against all of everything that they will implode.
Mm.
The only person that they could replace her with that could win is Michelle Obama.
Right. Who doesn't want to
And
run?
She
apparently.
doesn't want it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that, but I also believe her husband is actually the one kind of running the White House right now and the policies. And she hates the White House so much, and she doesn't want that role. But if she could be talked into it by her husband by saying, "This is it, we close the door on that American chapter, and we begin anew. If you're the president," she could. If she took it, she could win.
Yeah. It's an extraordinary state of affairs. There have been 2 incumbent Democrat presidents since World War II who have stood down an election year, Truman and Johnson. Slightly different circumstances. I think in both those cases, there was a fear they may lose primaries, which obviously has not been the problem for Biden. But there's also the 25th Amendment. I mean, is Biden now coming into this? I saw yesterday's press secretary insisting he's not got any form of dementia. I thought that was a blatant lie. I just think you look at a guy of 81 or 2, whatever he is, he clearly has got a form of dementia. I mean, it's inarguable.
And it's not a bad thing. It happens to some people. It's not an ageist thing. You know, you look at Alan Dershowitz, that guy is what, 85 and sharp as a tack.
Yeah.
So it's not just it's an important thing for the president to be clear-minded. I think they're lying to you again as well. The 25th Amendment, however, smartly was written after Kennedy, that it can only be the president, the vice president, and the cabinet. So it's his own party, and the cabinet and the vice president have to agree. Congress can't do it. There's no laws that can be passed or anything else. No one else can take him out. That's important so you don't have political games going on to take the president out all the time. But I don't think that these people in Washington, they've been running their own departments and their own show now for a while. I would imagine they'd be like, why would we? I mean, we've already been doing it for all this time. We haven't really needed him. Just leave it alone. Why change horses when you don't need to?
Yeah.
In their opinion, I think.
Glenn, you've said on the record, I believe, that one of your spirit animals was Howard Beale from Network, one of my favorite movies. And rather like Howard, you've tapped in to a lot of simmering anger and distrust and, just a feeling of disenfranchisement from society and so on. Is that accurate? Is that how you see your role, that you're sort of getting to the people that don't have a voice like he did?
No, not my role. When I said that, it was kind of how I felt that this is a character I watched on TV, in the movie, and I'm like, I'm that guy now. But that's a little, that takes it too far. It's genuine. I'm not tapping into anything. I'm feeling what I'm feeling and expressing it. I'm not a journalist. I'm a self-educated man. Only in America could somebody like me end up doing what I'm doing. I have a pretty good gut. I read a lot. I dismiss experts an awful lot because I've seen the experts be wrong over and over, and we keep asking them after they're wrong, okay, so now what do we do? And then they're wrong. And then we ask them again. So, okay, so what's the plan now? Stop it. Everybody's convinced there's this system that's going to protect everything. Well, it might protect a few at the very, very top, but it's not going to protect the average citizen. And right now, all over the world, you're seeing people rise up and say, pretty much, I think, and I think I've heard you say this, for the same reasons, just different outcomes. You're not listening to me.
Yeah.
You're not hearing me. You're not helping me as a farmer or a teacher or anything else. You're helping yourself. You're helping corporations. You're helping labor unions, but you're not helping me. And people feel like, you're making all these decisions as global governments, about what I'm going to eat, where I'm going to live, what I'm going to drive, how many vacations I can take. And you haven't even talked to me about it. And every time I bring it up, you say, oh, that's not happening. And then we find out, yes, it is happening. And then you admit it, but there's something else now that you're saying is a conspiracy theory. They've had enough of this.
How big do you think a part in the global unrest and feelings that you've just articulated comes down to failure to properly control borders? Because it seems to me that's a running theme through Europe, America, the UK, that people feel not only all the things you've just said, but they also feel that the country that they're in is changing at such a rapid pace. They don't really recognize it. And they're fearful about the impact on infrastructure, on health, education, all jobs, all these kind of things. But that also the very fabric and essence of what their country is changing at such a rate they don't really recognize it.
So I was in Sweden a few years ago, and it was my first time, and it's such a different country. The architecture, everything, it's just different. It's beautiful. And I was having breakfast, and I was talking to the waitress, and I said, so, tell me about your culture. And she said, oh, well, we don't really have our own special culture. It's kind of like everything else. And I'm looking out the window, and I said, have you looked at those buildings? I mean, it's completely different than any place else. And so the first thing that I think happened was people were told their culture is no better. And in fact, if you're proud of your culture, shame on you. You're a racist of some sort. Well, no, I mean, there are people in Scotland, there are people in the United Kingdom, there's people in France that are proud to be French. They're different. My wife, her family is from Italy. She still is, Italian in many ways. And there's nothing wrong with that. So they've been told, don't fly the flag, don't be proud of your country. Your country's not special. Then they were told, you're a racist if you believe any different. And so a lot of self-examination on that happened for a long time. How can I fix that? And then they've overplayed that hand so much that people are like, no, you know what? No, I'm not racist. As you're letting people into the country, taking my job, destroying the infrastructure. I can't get a place at the hospital. In our country, we have veterans that are living on the streets while we're putting migrants up in 5-star hotels and paying for their food. I'm sorry, that doesn't make me a racist. You're destroying the country. And I think that was the final straw, that people are just, I like my own sovereignty. I like my country. There are other great countries too. And I believe in common sense, and I want to help people, but this is not helping anyone. This is going to get all of us the short end of the stick.